Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to synthesize 4 distinct data-driven frameworks into a unified masterclass on modern leadership. Listen, if you've ever looked around at your team and wondered why are some people totally fired up while others are just, going through the motions, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're putting all the pieces of that puzzle together.
You know, Netflix CEO Reed Hastings absolutely hit the nail on the head with this quote. He said keeping one wrong person is like having a virus that slowly kills the entire organization. And honestly, he wasn't exaggerating. The research actually shows that a single disengaged employee can drag down overall team performance by over 50%. That is massive, which is exactly why modern leadership isn't just about hiring smart people. It's about mastering a very specific systemic formula to actually manage them.
Okay, so here is our agenda for today, which is going to serve as our cognitive map. 1. The performance equation. 2. Decoding human motivation. 3. The capability commitment matrix. 4. The remote environment crisis. And finally, 5. Adapting your leadership style.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the performance equation, the foundational formula for organizational success. It really all boils down to this one simple equation. Performance equals motivation times ability times environment. And what's so powerful about looking at it this way is that it reminds us that while motivation is absolutely critical, it's just not enough on its own. I mean, think about it. You could have a highly capable, ridiculously motivated genius, like an absolute Einstein, but if you stick them in a toxic environment, their output still drops to 0. It's literally a multiplication problem. If any one of those 3 variables is a 0, the whole shebang equals 0.
Moving right along to Section 2, Decoding Human Motivation, the psychology of what makes people tick.
Okay, so Herzberg's 2-factor theory offers us a massive myth bust here. Think about things like hygiene factors, your company policies, working conditions, and yes, even your salary. If these things are bad, people are absolutely dissatisfied. But here's the kicker. Fixing them doesn't actually create motivation. A great salary just stops you from wanting to quit. True motivation, that actually comes from achievement, from recognition, and from doing work that is genuinely meaningful. Eliminating dissatisfaction and creating true motivation are 2 completely separate leadership jobs. But wait, there's even more going on in our heads. Beyond those basic needs, our brains are constantly running these rapid, subconscious, mental calculations to decide exactly how much effort we're going to give on any given day. Through equity theory, we're basically asking, hey, is my effort to reward ratio actually fair compared to the guy sitting next to me? If it's not, motivation plummets. Then through expectancy theory, we implicitly ask, if I try really hard, can I succeed? And will I even care about the reward at the end? And finally, reinforcement theory dictates that we're going to repeat behaviors that actually lead to positive consequences. We are calculating this stuff in real time every single day.
That brings us to Section 3, the capability commitment matrix, assessing and managing team drive.
Statistically speaking, if you look at thousands of teams across the board, the reality usually breaks down like this. 20% are your absolute superstar A players, the ones generating your breakthrough results. 70% are developing B players who are strong in either skill or motivation, but generally not both. And then, 10% are those toxic C players dragging everyone else down. And the biggest mistake you can make? Trying to manage all 3 of these groups the exact same way.
This matrix maps out exactly how to handle each specific type. Let's start down at the bottom with the C types. Low skill, low drive. The strategy here, document and fire them. Honestly, Enron famously tolerated and even promoted C-types who lacked any ethical commitment. And, well, we all know how that ended. Next, you've got the B-types, with high drive but low skill. You develop and train these folks. Southwest Airlines famously hired for attitude and trained for skill, which helped them maintain incredible profitability. Then you have the B-types who have high skill but low drive, basically disengaged talents. You've got to challenge and re-engage them, just like Steve Jobs did when he came back to a totally demoralized Apple and challenged them to build the iMac. And finally, your A-types. High skill, high drive. You absolutely must elevate and reward them before a competitor poaches them. Give them new challenges systematically, kind of like Amazon did to build up its future executives.
All right, Section 4, the remote environment crisis, systemic vulnerabilities of distance.
So we've covered motivation and ability, but we really need to talk about that 3rd variable, environment, because remote work has introduced this massive, systemic vulnerability. The Leadership Execution Institute actually identified what they call the FONE factors as the deep-seated root cause of remote cultural erosion. That stands for fear, overconfidence, negative impressions, and execution blindness. These are just predictable human biases, but they get massively disproportionately amplified when your team is working at a distance with low visibility.
And it happens through a pretty vicious, predictable cycle. Step 1. Being physically apart limits our crucial feedback loops and naturally amps up stress. Step 2. That stress triggers those internal F-phone factors we just talked about. Step 3. Because of those biases, these unseen blindside forces start emerging in your day-to-day ops. And finally, Step 4, the inevitable result is systemic execution drift, where what leaders actually do starts to deviate wildly from your established standards.
So what does this drift actually look like in the real world? It basically manifests as these 4 blindside forces operating just under the radar. Standard drift is when your official processes slowly get replaced by random variations. Culture dilution happens when your unified values start fragmenting into isolated individual habits. Supervisor inconsistency is when leaders just default to their own personal styles instead of sticking to shared organizational standards. And misread metrics, that's the super dangerous assumption that just because your KPIs look stable, everything is fine, which totally masks the cultural erosion happening beneath the surface. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that remote inconsistency isn't just a skills gap you can train your way out of. It is a system failure, and it requires a systemic countermeasure. Specifically, a leadership execution system, or LES, to provide daily reinforcement and correct that drift.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Adapting Your Leadership Style, the multiplier in the performance equation.
Whether you're dealing with a disengaged B player or trying to manage a remote team fighting execution drift, the ultimate multiplier here is your leadership style. Great leaders don't just rigidly rely on one approach. They dynamically adapt across these different styles based on the specific capabilities of their team and whatever environmental challenges they're facing right now. Need to drive intense innovation and change, like at Tesla? You lean into a transformational style like Elon Musk. Need to set a massive long-term vision? That's strategic leadership, like Jeff Bezos. Trying to foster pure creativity in a highly skilled team? Laissez-faire leadership, kind of like Richard Branson, usually works best there. Or maybe you just really need to build trust and ethical practices. That calls for the authentic leadership of someone like Warren Buffett. The true secret sauce is situational leadership, constantly assessing the maturity, competence, and environment of your team and adjusting your approach to match it.
So, we have unpacked the performance equation, explored the psychology of motivation, categorized team capabilities, exposed the hidden blindside forces of remote work, and looked at how to dynamically adapt your leadership style. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question to chew on as you evaluate your own organization's health. Ask yourself, are your team's failures genuinely a lack of motivation, or are they actually a failure of your leadership system? How you answer that question changes absolutely everything about how you lead tomorrow.